Hey guys, Blonde Acid or Toxic Answer here, and today we are gonna do a new series, as you can tell, Which One to Evo 3, and as you can tell by the title, this one is gonna be on bum ba da bum Valkyrie, that's right. So I have a little notepad thing. I guess I can kind of show you guys it. I have a little bit of my notes and stuff like that. I actually got it for every single monster here. I'll just give you guys a little sneak peek real quick. Oh, look at that! Look at that! Look at that! It's got here's my Valkyrie notes. Here's all, you guys can see all my notes real quick. I have all this stuff planned out. All right, that's enough of that. That's enough of that. All right, I think I did that right. Okay, that's enough of that. We're not gonna focus on that. So I'm just gonna be kind of reading off these, I guess, in a way. I'm going to see how this works out, and I'm just going to pretty much give you guys, based on your current situation in the game, which Valkyrie you should Evo 3, in my opinion. Alright, I guess we'll just start. So, I'm going to start by listing off the strengths of each one of these. Okay, honestly, I'm not going to, list off the skills, and I could list off the skills, and I could list off all their stats and stuff like that, but honestly, if you're going to Evo 3 a Valk, I think you should probably know what the monster does. Like, let's be realistic here. You're going to know what the monster does. And if you don't, then, I mean, it's in the Astro Guide. You can I'll just put it up right here. You can pause it or whatever. Alright, there we go. So, what Fire is good for? Fire is good as a niche PvP defender. When I say niche, I mean good in certain scenarios. If you're not aiming for super high ranks especially. And what this means is that in super high rank PvP, it's when I say super high rank, I mean aiming for rank 1 pretty much, and it's different because you're pretty much just trying to stall your opponents out as long as possible so they can't get as many attacks in and it takes longer to kill you. Whereas in lower ranks PvP, you're actually like aiming to win. So this is better in like, not necessarily lower ranks I guess, but like when you're not aiming for rank 1 because your defense is actually trying to win. I'll get to what Wood Valk does and how it's different in a little bit, but basically Fire Valk is great for that if you're not aiming to try to get rank 1. Also, it's very good at clearing story mode, and it excels on PvP offense. Obviously, story mode clear because it has the little Siphon passive, and in PvP offense it's really nice because, again, you get a lot of SP. It's an SP battery pretty much, and you can dual tank with fire monsters since they don't have any selective targeting for the AI. The next thing is Water Valk. Water Valk is just a great water attacker, especially because of her abilities, which you can see here. She's really great if you don't have a water attacker, and she's good her strengths are golem clearing as well as PvP offense. And golem clearing basically because she has an AoE defense down for the boss, I guess, and she has a little bit of a predator, which is really, really helpful for golems. Alright, moving on to Wood Valkyrie. Here's her stuff. Wood Valk is basically mainly used for PvP defense for super high ranking players, as it's really a stall bot, but it's healing. It's not too much used outside of that, honestly. Like, I guess you could argue it's... No, you can't really argue anything else. It's pretty much only a high level PvP defense mon. And honestly, I see a lot of people focusing on getting her when she's really like not going to help the defense win in a way, if that makes sense. Like, she's okay, but she's more of a stalling monster. She's not like, oh, let's win, let's kill the enemy, right? And I think that's where a lot of players get confused, in my opinion. Anyways, let's go on to Light. Light has these abilities. Basically, Light is very good for PvP offense and some Tower of Chaos. The reason she's not good in PvP defense is because she is really fragile, and I say really fragile because when you're actually building a Light Valkyrie, you're gonna want to gear it more towards an offensive standpoint, mainly because of her 5-star skill, and that's gonna leave her very vulnerable to attacks and dying quickly on PvP defense. However, if you really want to, you could probably fit her into a PvP defense. Definitely not impossible. She is, I think, is still a solid monster with a lot of versatility. So, yeah, there's that. Lastly, Dark Seagron. You can see her skills here. Basically for Darks, she's not too strong. Honestly, her only use would really be PvP defense. I guess a little bit of TOC as well, for the same reason as Light. But honestly, she's not even the highest tier in PvP defense. So, honestly, I probably wouldn't build her. Now that we've gone over the strengths of each one, I guess the strengths, we're going to talk about in what scenarios you would build them. Now, as you guys probably saw from my notes, I don't really have anything there, so this is just going to be a little bit of me talking about when I would build certain Valkyries. I'm going to talk about right now, basically, if you don't have a water attacker, let me go over the water attackers that you might have. Water Garuda is a water attacker you might have. Water Anu, to an extent, is a water attacker you might have. Wasn't there water? No, it wasn't Water Nizha. No, was it Thor? No, you would not build Water Thor. Water Loki. Water Yaksha. And I think there was one more. I do believe there was one. Actually, I don't think there was one more. Yeah, there wasn't one more. Yeah, if you have one of those monsters, let's see, Yaksha, Loki, Anu, or Garuda, I would say that you should put less priority on a Water Valk and possibly more priority on something else, because if you notice that the main uses are for golems clearing as well as PvP offense. If you're the problem is there's really no high fire golem, so it's not going to increase your times in golems by that much. However, it is obviously like a really, really good attacker with the defense down, so it can increase your times. However, it's not going to be significant enough to really justify Evo 3ing it in that sense. I would say that it's probably more useful to upgrade a monster for PvP to try to increase your rankings and get more gems per week than decreasing your time by like 5 or 10 seconds in a golem's dungeon, in my opinion. That's only if you don't. Okay, basically, if you don't have a water attacker though, definitely go for water Sigrun. Like for me, I'm not going for water because number one, I don't have one, even though I could have gotten one from the contract, and number two, because obviously I already have a water Loki, and I can pretty much just get a water Yaksha if I wanted. I decided to go for fire though. I don't really need the water attacker right now. But yeah, so basically, if you don't have a water attacker, definitely go for water. However, if you do, if you do have a water attacker that you're comfortable with, I would probably stray away from it, because the problem with bringing water is that, as I said before, unless you're like a really late game player and you're trying to do like Dragons B9, then it's not going to be useful for dragons, because it's dragons B4 and B9, and you're really only going to struggle with probably 5 through 8 anyways. 9 is kind of a niche thing in a way. And past that, the golem stage is golems B1 and 6, and you're never going to be doing golems B6. So it's really not that useful on that front either. Alright, now moving on to why. So basically, I guess to summarize again, if you don't have a water attacker, build it. If you do, probably go for, if you do have a water attacker, probably go for something more PvP oriented, which would be any of the other 4, to be honest. Now, at this point, you have to decide, what are you aiming for? Are you aiming for a PvP offense team or a PvP defense team? Now, this can be very unique because, for example, if you're happy with your PvP defense right now, and you don't have any ideas on how you would switch it based on a Valkyrie, and obviously, you might have some ideas, but I don't think it's worth Evo 3ing something to test whether or not it's going to work. So if you're happy with your PvP defense, and you want something for PvP offense, I would once again say either go for water, or go for light, or go for fire. Obviously, because wood and dark are mainly used for PvP defenses, so those are out of the table if you're trying to go for an offensive PvP monster. Now, water once again can be useful because of its AoE defense down. However, you have to really be able to you have to have another good water monster for PvP, or all the wood monsters, since it is a heavy wood-centric meta, wood and water usually. The water Valkyrie will get bursted down pretty quickly. So what you really have to make sure you do is you have to have either a water Persephone or a water Nightmare or something along those lines to actually split tank, or even a water sewer would be fine. You have to have something to split tank with the water Valkyrie so it doesn't instantly die to an Evo 3 Wood Arthur, because for example my Wood Arthur, I can show you guys all of its gems and everything. Look, if this thing crits and has a 35% chance, it's one shot a Valkyrie, it's a one shot Evo 3 Water Valk on attack HP. At least I assume that's what it was on. So yeah, you have to be really careful when bringing water. You have to make sure you can actually have a split tank unit with it. However, some other alternatives for offense is, because it is a heavy wood water centric meta, if you want to go for Fire Valk, that's also another viable choice. As Fire Valk, if you have some decently high resist on it, it can stop all like the nightmare seals and stuff like that, and it can stop all like the water Odin stuns or whatever's coming at you, because I know a lot of the water monsters actually have debuffs such as stuns and seals. So you can stop a lot of that with high resist, plus you can build it decently tanky and still get off a lot of damage and SP gain because of the heavy wood-centric meta. However, on the contrary, if you have light, it is also a very viable option. This is mostly for lower PvP with the stun, but if you want to run this into like some full light dark teams, that's perfectly viable as well. Mainly due to the fact that light and darks have 0 base resistance, so it would be very, very strong against those. However, to be honest, I would much prefer water or fire over light, simply because I don't think light necessarily excels anything. I think it's a versatile monster, but I think if you want a versatile monster, you can go with light for sure. But even then, I think water still just outclasses it in some ways, except for obviously PvP defense, which we'll talk about next. But yeah, if you're trying to go for a PvP offensive monster, most of the times, I would go for either water or fire, and it depends. If water, you need a split tank, and it's a little bit more risky because fire really isn't in the meta right now. And if you're going for fire, you probably want to have some decent gems, and I honestly prefer fire for PvP offense over water. And that's just my personal opinion, just because of how the meta is formed right now. Alright, so currently we've established that if you don't have a water attacker, go for... I'm just going to be like giving constant updates, I guess, in a way. If you don't have... So we've established so far that if you don't have a water attacker, you probably want to go for Water Valk. And Water Valk can be good on PvP offense. However, fire kind of outclasses it due to the current meta. And while you can bring light in this, while you can work towards the light Valkyrie, it's probably not the greatest choice, just because it doesn't really excel. And unless you're like a newer player in a way, and you don't have any like set teams for things, then obviously light can help then, because it is like versatile. But the problem is it doesn't really excel. And if you're aiming for like a really niche thing, for example PvP offense, golems, or progression, or having a water attacker, very niche things, the other fire and water just outclass it in. Now to move towards PvP defense, obviously water is just out. Water is just going to get bursted down by wood monsters. However, now we're going to talk about the difference between wood, fire, light, and dark, since those are the ones that are going to be used for PvP defenses. Now, one thing to note is that dark, while it does have that 100% chance for stun, that falls off very hard later. So I would honestly not recommend Evo 3ing a dark Valkyrie for the unless like you have like a bunch of Valkyries and you just want to brag about it. But the reason for that is because it really falls off to the point where like all of her abilities are just CC, and they're not even like strong CCs. Like a one turn stun isn't really going to be that good against high resistance monsters. The same thing goes for a silence. It's not even that strong of an ability per se in PvP defense. Although one good part about it is it can't be bursted down as quickly, because obviously it's a tank and it is and it's dark, so they don't really have elemental advantage unless they bring light monsters, in which case it will be easier to get off that 100% stun. But regardless, I think that dark is probably not the way to go for most PvP defenses. Moving on to light, it's kind of the same thing as dark. I honestly would not use... The only thing that light Valkyrie would have on PvP defense is possibly on a mono light defense, because with all the dark attackers, you really can't just bring like one light monster in this meta. You have to either be like all or nothing pretty much. Like I have 2, and that still gets kind of screwed over by full dark offense teams. Alright, so basically I wouldn't really recommend it unless you're trying to go for a mono light defense, which in that case it can be okay, but still, even then, it's like it's not great. It's really just not great, since it still will get bursted down pretty quickly. Moving on to wood, as I was saying before, wood and fire are probably the 2 best for PvP defense. So I would say wood is mainly used when you're trying to hit rank 1, and again, the reason for that is because of her abilities, and her abilities are mainly used to stall. That, in combination with like a water purse, for example, is just one of the main ways that people make battles last a long time. I'm sure you guys a lot of you guys have dealt with this before, and that's mainly useful not necessarily to win battles, but to try to hit that rank 1 when you're trying to make everyone dissuade from battling your defense, since it'll take too long to beat. Now, on the contrary, if you're trying to win battles, Fire Valk is probably the choice to go. Many people say that Fire Valk is bad. I highly disagree. I think that she is great for two things. She is great for, number one, baiting your enemy into hitting it, because obviously if they hit the Valkyrie, and you're, say, like on attack HP defense, if they hit Valkyrie, they're not going to be able to hit anything else, and that's very significant, because that means that your other monsters, if you set high threat monsters on as your other monsters as well, then they're going to be kind of like screwed in a way. Like, for example, what I'm going to do is set Fire Valk with Fire Indra. Obviously, Fire Indra is a very, very high threat monster on PvP defense because of its elemental edge, and it's an attacker, so people are going to be focusing on Indra, and if they do that, then the Fire Valkyrie gets to charge its SP battery and just start like ramping up damage pretty much and get its AoE off. And its AoE, while it's not too strong because of high resists in PvP offense, it should theoretically be able to probably stun 1 out of every 5-ish. Probably 1 out of every... I'd say stun 1 out of every 5. So, in that sense, it can be a very strong force to reckon with, also because it is a balance type, so you can go attack HP defense, make it fairly tanky with still outputting decent enough damage, more so than a lot of its counterparts. So when you're going for a PvP defense that's actually trying to win, I think that overloading it with bruiser threats, such as for example the Fire Valkyrie, is the way to go. Now you can argue that Wood Valkyrie can be built bruiser on attack HP defense, but if you guys want to really quickly, what's it called? But the reason that that's not necessarily super viable is for two reasons. Number one, I did talk about the prevalence of dark attackers, but you also have to understand the prevalence of fire attackers. I want to just point out some of the fire attackers. Fire Indra, which I guess counts as fire everything, but Fire Balrona, Fire Siegfried, Fire Nightmare, Fire Arthur, Fire Boltwing, the list goes on and on and on and on. Look at all these that I can name out. Look at all of these that I can name out. And I know a lot of people have a lot of these monsters, and the reason that this is significant is because when you look at something like Fire, because they can all take out Wood Valk so easily. But when you look at something like Fire Valk, for example, what are the water attackers going to be? There's so few water attackers. There's the Water Valkyrie, obviously, and there's also obviously we talked about this before, there's the Water Loki, there's a couple others, that Yakshare and Anu. There's so few water attackers that it makes the Fire Valkyrie a lot more sought after and better on PvP defense, in my opinion. For the sole reason that, number one, it serves as a threat, and if you can overload with bruiser threats, I think that's the best way to make a PvP defense right now. And number two is because, what's it called? Because of the typings that she has. The typing of fire is actually pretty good on PvP defense meta right now. Obviously, you want to be able to stray away from the... Obviously, you want to be able to either go full mono light or stray away from the lights completely. And she kind of fits with that. And it's taking advantage of the fact that the main water monsters used in PvP are sustain monsters. And while she doesn't really sustain too hard, if you pair her with sustainers such as like a Water Purse, for example, or a Water Nightmare, or a Fire Sheev, or something like that, she can still live. And that's a great way to... what's it called? And having her just paired with the sustainer means she can SP battery her way up and stuff like that, and kind of just live in the current meta due to the lack of water attackers. So I guess that's pretty much all I have to say. So to summarize, if you don't have a water attacker, definitely go for Water Valk, I'd say, since she's a strong force for helping your times on golems and as a PvP offense, and just as a water attacker in general, especially even for Titans. Light and Dark are honestly not really too strong. I guess Light would excel in PvP offense, but it's still not even that strong just because of the high resists once you get stronger. And when you're Evo 3ing in at 5, obviously you want to proportionalize it to how you're going to fare late game. Although it can be decent in PvP defense of mono light, I'd say, if you're trying to go that route. Other than that, it's only like decent for TOC, which you should never be Evo3ing a Nat 5 based on, oh, it's good for Tower of Chaos. Pretty bad for Titans and overall, so I probably wouldn't go for light. Same thing goes for Dark. It's pretty much only viable on PvP defense, and it's even not, and it gets outclassed by Fire and Wood. So I probably would not Evo 3 a Dark one either. Obviously, I wouldn't fuse them into any other Valkyries just because, like, you know, they're super like, it's a light Dark Nat 5. Like, come on. But yeah, I would more than likely, if you're aiming for a PvP defense, go for Wood or Fire. And obviously, I explained the differences between them and when you would go for them. Wood, if you're thinking ahead, like, oh, I eventually think I'll be able to compete with the top players in PvP ladder. You know, it doesn't have to be right now, but eventually, if you think that you're going to be able to have all those Evo 3 Nat 5s and stuff like that, be able to compete in the ladder very highly, then for sure go for Wood. But if you're trying to get more of a wins thing, then I would go for Fire, like I am. I guess that really covers it. I hope this is a good enough explanation, as I've been seeing a lot more questions arise on Reddit and stuff like that, based on like, oh, who should I Evo 3, which Nat 5 to Evo 3, and stuff like that. So I'm going to be doing a series, obviously, for all of these. I have them all planned out, as you guys saw. I think I do, right? Yeah, I'm pretty sure I do. Alright. Anyways, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video tomorrow. Peace out.